Welcome to another iteration of the Jungle Tier List. This time it's for the Vel'Koz patch era that's coming soon, I would assume. Though before I go on with the information of the tier list, I have to ask, if you're ever interested in purchasing a Jax Pack skin or Pack Sivir or any of those exclusive skins that you can no longer get without a code, and they're probably impossible to get now since you can't even get the codes anymore, like Riot Singed, there is a website called lowskinshop.com which would allow you to purchase these skins, or the codes to take these skins, so if you want you can give them out to your friends, and it is completely legit. The link is right here obviously in the video already, but you can find more information on it in the description. Alright, this time on the actual article I explained all the champions, so I don't need to explain any of them in the video. However, I will use this video time to explain how this tier list works, since some people are still confused about it. Now keep in mind that the tier list is largely opinionless as well, so don't be upset that I don't think your favorite jungler is #1 or I don't share the same opinions as you about certain things. I try my best to cut as much bias away from this. Some of my favorite junglers are in the pits, and some of the junglers I just absolutely hate are higher than I would want them to be, but I have to give them credit anyways. With that in mind, the tier list is split up into 5 brackets in order to justify the strengths of and to better exemplify the strengths of all the junglers. Like, you could argue, who's the better jungler? Elise, Vi, Lee Sin, or Kha'Zix, and all that other stuff. You can put them, in a little list. But if you put, I don't know, Vi higher than Elise, you'll have some people fighting about it. They'll bring up good arguments for Elise, and then if you put Elise above Vi, the same thing will happen. There's good justifications for each one. That's why I decided to split it into 5 little brackets, because certain champions excel at certain things or have certain aspects that make them unique from all the rest, or more specific to the rest, and they excel in those specific categories. Like Nautilus, he's one of the best jungle tanks in the game, like straight out, all around, really godlike as a tank, but he's nowhere near has any qualities as for a bruiser or any qualities as a fighter or any stuff. Basically put, the brackets emphasize certain qualities that make them fit a certain role. That is why certain junglers are in multiple ones, because they can fill different roles. Like Wukong is currently in the fighters, in the bruisers, and in the tank. He can be a fighter, meaning pure glass cannon, and pure paper thin, and then do certain things. And he's ranked differently if he's assumed to be build glass cannon, and the same goes for bruiser, and the same goes for pure tank. And that is also a difference I wanted to make point out in this video. A lot of players are confused as to what fighter, bruiser, and tank means. In the brackets, tank means pure tank. You build absolutely no offense, maybe until the very end, but you're relying purely on the tankiness of your kit and the pure tank items. This is like a Wukong again, building Randuin's Omen, Spirit of the Ancient Golem, or that kind of stuff, and just building pure defense, and how they're graded upon keeping that in mind. And in some cases, certain junglers that you think would be high up here are actually lower, because when they don't build any damage items, their strengths aren't emphasized, like Wukong again. I'll keep bringing him up a couple more times. Then Bruiser is the ones who emphasize both, either getting damage early and then building pure defense, or defense early and building pure damage later, like a half and half kind of thing, but they emphasize one thing first over the other. Champions like this is like a Wukong who gets Spirit of the Lizard Elder, Black Cleaver, and then builds pure defense, or like a Shyvana who builds Randuin's Omen first, Spirit of the Ancient Golem, and then builds Blade of the Rune King and Hydra and stuff like that. That's a bruiser. And then fighters, the obvious one, is pure glass cannon, pretty much disregarding survivability altogether, except maybe your Guardian Angel. Just building pure glass, going in and exploding and killing everybody before you die, hopefully. Then the magic damage dealers are the obvious ones. They're not all necessarily AP. They're not, well, they are a mix of AP, but largely their damage is magic. Whether or not they build AP items is one thing, but yeah, it is assumed these characters are building in ways to emphasize their magic damage abilities, either magic pen builds, AP builds, like pure stacking AP power, or some kind of tanky supportish hybrid thing or whatever. And the support tree is the one that confuses a lot of people, because they're not exactly used to the idea of support being more minimalistic than the broad the broad emphasis everybody keeps bringing it up with. Some people say, why isn't a Mumu there or a Nautilus there? The FCC. CC is, there's a lot of crowd control and a lot of champions. If I were to consider characters like Nautilus and Amumu support junglers simply because they have CC and they tend to build supportish in their builds, then that would mean I'd be forced to put tons of other junglers because they have CC and they can also build supporty little builds. Instead, the support bracket is more emphasized on junglers that give some form of artificial gold or remove artificial gold. And what artificial gold means is a way to adjust your stats without needing to buy items, such as Warwick's attack speed boost, his AoE buff to his teammates. That's artificial gold. You get a bunch of gold temporarily, which acts as if it's like sort of like buying a bunch of daggers or something, like fake gold that you don't actually have that's being given to you temporarily. That's kind of the best way to put it. Or Ness's Spirit Fire that shreds armor. That is robbing your opponents of stats. That's essentially negating some of their gold value. Or Trundle's Ultimate. Trundle's Ultimate counts as a very strong example of artificial gold. Negative artificial gold, to be exact. Use it on Dr. Muno. You strip a bunch of his health, a bunch of his armors, and a lot of other stuff. You just devalue the worth of his items because they're working against him, that kind of thing. So support junglers all either have a bunch of nifty abilities such as shields, heals, and stuff. Those also count for support. Or they have artificial gold boosts for yourself, or well, actually for your teammates or against the enemy team. And there's a few unique cases like Kale and Yorick, whose ultimates give them support scores, but they're variable in a lot of different ways. Like Yorick's ultimate is only as good as the person you use it on, and same with Kale, stuff like that. Those abilities are a little wacky. Also, something that kind of surprised me a lot is that a lot of people were confused about the S meaning. I'm like, not a lot of North Americans or Brits, but it was mostly people who aren't familiar with the arcade scorings or older video game kind of scorings. S means superior or the best score you can get. It's higher than A. The scorings basically go F, there's no E, D, C, B, A, and S. There's pluses in between them sometimes, in meaning that, you know, they're slightly better than this, but not enough to get into the next kind of score ranking. And and there's no minuses because that just makes everything a little bit more complicated. But yeah, that's essentially how it goes. Most champions do have better scores than you would think, because it is not graded in a bell curve. Keep that in mind. A bell curve is that there's no average, or at least average, with these champions, because these are all junglers. If I were to grade every champion in the game, you will see some champions with just stupid, awful scores. But since I'm only taking in the junglers that are, you know, worthwhile at the moment, of course the scores are kind of, you know, teetering to the positive sides. Except a few. There are very few junglers right now that have a lot of terrible scores. Like Mordekaiser as the only one that has an F in ganking, because pretty much even Warwick has a movement speed boost, and Mordekaiser has nothing. So that's why he scored an F. Anyway, most champions scored well, but you'll notice there's a spreadsheet at the very top of the list. That spreadsheet encompasses general jungling capability, their ganking prowess, their speed clearing. The new spirited change right there, the spirited category, shows that how much more their jungle improves after they buy their spirit item. Most champions get an okay boost. Some don't get a boost, and some get a dramatic boost. You'll see that if you compare the notes. And in like invasion and dueling scores right there. That's the general one. That applies to every single jungler all at the same time. Then when you get to the brackets, every bracket has its own little category scores there too. Those need to be taken into account in addition to the general scores. So if you're looking at the magic damage bracket, you take the general scores, the one all the way to the top that has the ganking, dueling, invasion, everything, and then you take the other spreadsheet that's exclusive to the magic damage dealers bracket and count that towards the jungler, and then you'll figure out their placement. However, that magic damage dealer bracket, the spreadsheet, does not apply to any of the other brackets. They are all those brackets have their own little spreadsheets that only applies to them. So keep that in mind. That those spreadsheets emphasize the values that are important for that type of subtype of jungler. So that's why they've been divided, and that's why they have their own little things. And that's why certain junglers can be high in one bracket and low in another bracket, because they're having different things weighed upon them. So keep that in mind. Also keep very, very much in mind that being in a lower tier, like tier 2 or tier 3, does not mean they're bad. Remember, there's a lot of junglers still missing, and I'm not taking into account all the junglers, all the characters to the game. Tier 1, 2, and 3 are all good. 3 is good. Two is great, and 1 is basically the ones that are most powerful and stupid in whatever role you're trying to pick. Also, keep in mind that junglers who have placements in more than one bracket tend to be better than one champion in one bracket. So if you have even if you have a jungler that you like that's not in any top 5 bracket, I mean, any top 5 of any bracket tier list, but he's in the top 10 of 3 different brackets, he could be considered better than a jungler who is in the top 3 of one single bracket, because that shows versatility, that shows adaptability. So keep that in mind when you look at this tier list, and don't get too upset if some of your junglers are not favored as well as others. Anyways, that's if you need more information on this, don't be afraid to write in the comments here in the video, or on the Reddit link, or on Reign of Gaming.